Who was Mother Teresa by Jim Giglotti. Childhood, Section 1. Born in Skopje on August 27, 1910, she had one sister and one brother. When she would eat a meal at the table, there would be another person she didn't know. When she grew older, she was old enough to know they were poor people that her parents helped. Her parents gave the poor a place to stay and a good meal. All a Spiritual Life, Section 2. She was just 8 years old. Her father died. Nobody knew what caused his sudden death. Her mother was too upset to work, and the law didn't give any part of business or property. They began to be poor, and they couldn't help the poor anymore. Later on, her mother recovered, and she was able to work again and was able to help others. Her mother said to see the face of Jesus in each hungry stranger's face. She was then inspired to be a missionary, and then later wanted to be a nun. Leaving Home, Section 3. Agnes's mother wasn't convinced at the thought of Agnes being a nun. Her mother knew she would never see her again. Drawn out, her mother stayed in her room and prayed the whole day straight. 24 hours later, her mother came to support her, but her brother wasn't that understanding. Lazar, her brother, left home in 1824 to attend military school. He was upset because he thought she was giving up everything. Agnes then left for India. India was a very needy place. To India, Section 4. She arrived in Madras, Chennai, India. She saw many slums and it made her heart ache. People in slums' beds were made out of mats and palm leaves. She arrived at Darjeeling after 10 days, Calcutta. She was preparing to become a nun in Darjeeling. She studied English, Bengali, and Hindi. For 2 years, on May 24, 1931, she took her first vows as a nun. She was now Sister Teresa. Agnes had a lot in common with Saint Teresa, and she was known as Little Flower. Agnes had been called Flower Bud. They both were known for their simplicity and practicality. Sister Teresa had the routine for her whole life as a nun. The routine was prayer time, breakfast, and then school. After school, it was office work, afternoon tea, and correcting papers. After papers, it was dinner, evening prayers, and bedtime. When Mother Superior at St. Mary's became ill, Sister Teresa became Mother Teresa. A Long Wait, Section 5. Mother Teresa wrote a letter to her mother about how she was glad to be teaching. Nuns rarely got to go outside. Teresa also could see slums from her bedroom window. Her mother reminded her she was there to help the poor. In Mohajil, the poorest people lived in the worst conditions. Mother Teresa prayed for the poor. The schoolgirls delivered food and medicine to the poor. They also visited the local hospital in 1946. Fighting began between Hindus and Muslims. It was a bloody battle. It lasted for 5 days, and at least 5,000 people were killed, and many more were injured. The Loreto Convent was the school Mother Teresa worked at. They did not have enough food to feed the whole school, so Teresa had no choice but to go outside to look for food. She witnessed terrible scenes that were dead bodies left everywhere on the streets. British soldiers found her looking for food, so they helped her find enough rice for several days. Into the Slums, Section 6. Teresa had worn a black and white habit, which are clothes of a nun. She wanted to be one of the people, so she wore a sari. She chose a simple white and a blue one, the blue associated with Mary, the mother of Jesus. She left the Loreto Convent to the slums, and it was the hardest thing she had ever done. She left with 3 rupees, which is 2.5 cents. She didn't have a place to stay, so she knocked at the Little Sisters of the Poor. It was a Roman Catholic organization that helps the elderly. She got a little bit of money and a bed. She worked and taught the poor children. She taught them with a stick and dirt. She taught them the Bengali alphabet. At the end of the month, more than 20 came a day. She gave out awards when they attended class. She gave them bars of soaps for prizes. First of the Poor, Section 7. She then opened a hospital for slums. It was behind a Hindu temple. After she saw a woman with a disease and rats ate at her flesh, maggots were in her wounds. So she took her to the hospital and they wouldn't help, but she wouldn't take no for an answer. She even read the Quran to Muslims, and she gave Ganga's river to the lips of Hindus. Before Hindus saw this, they thought she was trying to convert them to Christian. Missionaries of Charity Goes Global, Section 8. Teresa always needed supplies, but she believed God would provide them. She was asked by Calcutta people of the slums for medicine, but she didn't have the money. So she knocked on drugstores' doors for help, but some she got the door closed in her face. She went through Dr. Roy so she could have some morning water, so he put in a pump. She made enough money to start her Shanti Nagar project. A boy heard about her and he stopped eating sugar things so he could save money and give it to the charity. Mother Teresa now heard her mother was very ill. She tried to convince them to let her mother come to India, but it didn't work. She didn't go for the sake of the people of the slums. Her mother died in July 1972. The next summer, her sister died. Mother Teresa went to Oslo, Norway to receive her reward. She made the people of the slums feel like they were loved because they were sick and dying and they had no one else to love. Saint Among Us, Section 9. About 35 years, Mother Teresa only worked in India. In 1965, she had permission to open missionary of charity houses all over the world. She was invited by a local bishop to visit Venezuela, and she did. The next one opened in Rome, Italy, in 1968. They were put in Australia, Africa, England, and elsewhere. The first house in the U.S. was built in New York City. In 1982, she led a group to Iraq, Lebanon, and this country. The Middle East were in midst of war. Multiple children were huddled in hospitals where bombs had blown out windows and tore apart 2 floors. Mother Teresa was 72 years old and helped pick children up herself and waited for Red Cross cars. The children were taken to safety and missionaries opened 2 years later. She said, "We know what people need and we start doing it." Her father once said was an ordinary Laurel nun, every ordinary person, but with great love for her Lord. In the 1980s, her health began to fail, and over the years, she had many heart attacks. Mother Teresa also came down with a disease that were malaria and pneumonia. She was against doctors' orders, and she pressed on. She said, "I have all eternity to rest." She continued to work until March 1997. She died on September 5th, 1997 in Calcutta at 87. Pope John Paul II declared officially blessed Mother Teresa.